Welcome to the Audio University podcast. This week, I've got a special guest who has been a longtime mentor of mine. He was a professor at my university when I studied audio production. Bill Schulenburg is his name, and he's a big player in the Audio Engineering Society. He has been involved for a very long time. He's helped many people in my region and in my area become aware of the Audio Engineering Society. He's on the AES Board of Directors. He's the regional vice president of my region, and he's the chair of my AES section. And he and I will both be attending the AES convention coming up later this month in Long Beach, California, where he'll actually be receiving a fellowship award for his continued action in the organization over the years. So, Bill, I'm going to bring you up here. Can you hear me okay?
Hey,
Nice.
Here I am.
Thank you for being here, Bill.
You hear me okay
Yes.
now, right? Okay.
We've talked about this a lot, Bill, and you've supported me since I first started the channel, and I'm so glad that you're finally up here with me.
Well, I appreciate you honoring me with an appearance because I've been so proud of what you've done, and to see the whole community progress and to help people along in their audio journey. And that's really what I would want to talk about, because we'll get this part stuff out of the way. I love to talk about any part of audio. I've been a member of Audio Engineering Society since 1971, and my first recording session that I cleaned up after was 1961, when I was a little kid, not a little kid, but I was about 10, and I was very fortunate to have that opportunity on both sides of the microphone.
And back then you were using Pro Tools 10, right? What was that?
Actually, when I started, we had a 3-track machine. We did have a 3-track Ampex, a half-inch 3-track. And it didn't take long until, I don't know, maybe 62 or 3 hours, just shortly after I started helping make records. I don't want to overstate the early 60s, but we recorded everything. People would come into the studio and they'd record, and we were done. And if it was stereo, we could maybe add one track. I mean, if it wasn't stereo, we could add another mono track and then mix it to a different mono machine. Most of our machines were full-track mono Ampex 300s at that time. I remember when they did get a 350, that seemed like a whole new level of quality. And then the 4-track, half-inch 4-track came in, followed not long after by the 1-inch 8-track, and I did the first 16-track session in St. Louis. That's where I'm based, of course, and I did the first 16-track session January 1st, 1972, and things have just kept changing. That was a huge leap to go to 16-track because we were one of the few. Technisonic Studios was the name of the company. And we had one of the few setups with a 16-track machine with 16 Dolby units, 16 Dolby A units. So just the noise reduction was roughly $30,000 to add to the 16 tracks, not to mention the unbelievable wiring that I had to do. That was my job as the grunt work guy. I was happy to do it. I learned so much, wiring harnesses and things like that. And then we got ATRs, Ampex ATR 102s when they finally came in. By this time, we were using 440s all the time.
Well, and things have changed, is what you're saying. And I think that we're going to get into that because, no, it's all right.
But anyway,
we're going to get into that because I think it is important, even if no one knows what Bill is talking about, having a mentor who did audio in the context of yesterday, and then, and saw it develop over the decades that followed. I think that they're going to give you... We are getting ahead of ourselves, but...
There's so much stuff, and Kyle knows this firsthand. I can't shut up. I love talking about all aspects of what we do, but let's just shift all the way back to why would you, why are you a member of the AES? And the obvious answer to me is, why wouldn't you be? What Kyle is doing is extremely important. The community is really great. I'm so pleased that he's doing it and that you all are a part of it, because all this you get as much interaction as you possibly could. This is very good. You interact with Gabe, who also was the former Eastern Region
Yeah,
Vice
and
President.
for those listening, Gabe is
the
the
AES.
person who I've partnered with for the Audio University membership. He teaches our Mixing Essentials
Yes.
course. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great, and I met him not decades ago, but maybe it was about less than 10 years ago I met him. But at that time, he was the chair of, or the vice president of the Eastern Region. And when I came in here in the Central Region, and then he also was in charge of the Education Committee, or he and Angela Paiva, who is now the Eastern Region VP, they co-chaired the Education Committee. I don't think Gabe is anymore, because you're keeping him so busy.
Well, I think that this is an important
But,
point that you mentioned, and you're basically jumping to what I think is the number one reason to be a part of AES, which is meeting people. But let's take a step back and help people understand what even is AES. I think the best way that I've understood it through the course of my career is that there are different levels of the AES, but it's all one thing. So it's an international organization, it's an international society.
Correct.
And you can meet people from all around the world in things like the conventions or certain events that happen around the world. But then I think it's also important to realize that even if you never plan to go to one of these conventions, your city may have a local section, or at least a city within a few hours drive of you might have a local section.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm sorry, I can't interrupt. I can't emphasize that enough. The fact that this is an international organization. There are bigger international organizations, and we're not as big as we used to be, but we have roughly 10,000 members, maybe a little less and a little more, depending on what part time of the year it is and when expiration dates happen. But you have a local contingent of colleagues. And the great thing, I think, that your audience might be interested in, it's wonderful to get the kind of feedback that you're getting here in the community from each other, and I think that's very important. But when you go to an AES meeting in your local community or attend one of our local events, you meet people of all walks of life in the business. You'll have sound contractors, you'll have AV repair people, you'll have front of house people who do music. We have front of house people who do plays and musicals and everything. And you'll meet other professors who are involved in teaching people how to care about audio. And now, of course, my perspective on it's a little different because when I'm 18 years old, whatever it was, I wanted to be an audio engineer. I loved the whole thing. So you naturally joined the Audio Engineering Society, much as I did the Grammys and the Musicians Union and ASCAP and all these things. You wanted to do these things, so you naturally, I want to read commercials on the radio. So I joined AFTRA, which is now SAG-AFTRA, and I happen to be the St. Louis vice president of SAG-AFTRA as well. And we're a labor union. That's a different kind of organization. But it's the same idea, a group of people who are all pulling the same way with different length ropes, different kinds of ropes, and different directions. I would say that there are plenty of resources. If you join AES, if you go to aes.org, I'm sure that Kyle will provide.
Yeah, there's a link down
It's
below.
very
I think
simple.
there's a link to AES, and then there's a link to the AES convention if you decide you wanted to register to.
Yes, that's very good too. If you can attend that, it is and Kyle will tell you it's an amazing experience. I talk to older folks all the time because it's not quite as big as it used to be because we have so many other events like it around the country. But AES is one of the things we do is create standards. If you've heard of AES 67, you've heard of all these scientific standards, digital circuitry, and the various standards that connectors have to meet and things like that. We do that. I don't. People a lot smarter than I do that. But we have, people do research. Actually, I think Sean Olive is our lecturer at the our guest speaker,
Nice.
one of our guest speakers at the convention, and he is one of the leading. He's a big deal at Harman, and he is involved in headphone research and development of the standards and measurement of the performance thereof. And if you're a researcher at a university or in a company, your Dolby, whatever, you write papers just as they do in medicine journals. We have a journal called the AES Journal, and it's no longer in print, but we do it online, and those are accredited peer-reviewed journals. So you would submit papers to those, and what I find, being of limited technical skill there, I love to read the abstracts. And if you understand what an abstract is, it's a little paragraph, a summary of what the paper is about. And I love seeing what they're working on, what people around the world are working on. And these are the real deal. These aren't people who are...
These are like the white coat engineers, like people recording the Beatles.
People.
But it's really the people who are developing and researching acoustics and electronics and DSP and things like that power our industry. And it's
Absolutely.
You don't have to be, I think, one of those people to even get value out of the white papers, like you're saying. But
no, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting you to read through the papers and the mathematics and the formulas and all of that. But when you just read the abstract, I should have had one up here ready to read to you. But I used to look through them and see, well, they're working on this. Unbelievable. You'll have people who are working on spatial audio in, say, fighter jets, so that the warning signal that comes from each individual gauge appears in your head where you need to look to see what the warning is. It's really that kind of thing. You don't even think about that. And a lot of people who are involved or learning audio forget that this is something that is part of it. It's not all about, making music or making records, whatever it is. That's a very important part and a very visible part. But that doesn't happen without people designing microphones and speaker arrays and signal processing, and now programming plugins and processing equipment and all of that. It's all tied in, and you can find your niche really easy, and not real easy, but you find it, and you might find a career path that you know nothing about right now, that you haven't even thought about. We have members here in the St. Louis area that mix network television shows and Emmy-winning broadcasts and things like that. We have, we just have all kinds of different people, and sometimes they're too busy to attend a meeting, but they all are very supportive. And the other thing, I think, Kyle, I think you'll verify this, that most people who attend one of our meetings that are, well, I'm going to say newbies, are always surprised.
Yeah.
The students at Webster will come and say, well, gee, I can't believe you guys actually talk to me. I said, well, we love talking to people. And it's the same thing when you go to the convention. And Kyle can testify to this, too. If you're walking down the aisle of one of the displays and you see Bob Clearmountain, you turn to him and say, hi, Bob, can I ask you a couple questions? And he's going to turn and talk to you. George Massenberg's the same way. A lot of these people. Al Schmidt used to be that way when he would attend. And you see these people that you've heard of, and you say, holy cow, well, and they're not going to talk to me. Well, of course they're going to talk to you. That's why
Well, let's hang on that for a second, Bill, because let me first say that we're going to be talking a lot about AES and how awesome it is. Let me be up front. This is not a sponsored deal. No one's paying me. No one's paying Bill. No one pays hardly anybody in the AES. It's a volunteer.
The whole thing is a volunteer organization. Yes, I'm all.
But what I do think, what I want to say is that I think that this is really important for people who don't have many connections in the industry yet. Because of what you said, it's like you go to these meetings, and even that first day, people, if you talk to people, they'll probably be very kind. They may even prompt you if they're a really nice section like we are. But I think there's something really important to be said about networking in anything, right, Bill? And
very important. This is what used to be the only advantage, or not only, but one of the main advantages of going to a school program. And Kyle has done a really good job here in the community of replicating a good percentage of that in the mixed feedback and these live events that you
Within the
guys do.
membership. Yep.
It's
Yep.
it's that's always really wonderful. And but what we it's hard to. I mean, I don't want to say it's not as good as the other thing.
Well, it can't be.
These things
It's
are
trying to
ideally
trying to simulate an in-person experience, and it will
Absolutely.
never be quite there, right? Yeah.
Well, no, it's not going to be quite there, and neither. But on the other hand, the live event can't possibly reproduce the depth and detail that you go into here. So, I was happy to see you have a member who is a member of both. And actually, if you're in the San Francisco section, you'll know B.T. Gibbs. He was the. I don't know if he's the president anymore, but he was a really good guy, and all the people in the San Francisco section. I think David Bowles, the Western region vice president, might be a San Francisco member. I don't know that for sure, but we have these sections. Some of them are in major cities. Now here in St. Louis, we have limited resources, and it's hard to really get a critical mass of maybe 36 people to do a studio crawl, as they just recently did in San Francisco. But some of the major cities, Nashville has couple 300 members, and so does Chicago, and Indiana has a big one in Indianapolis, and Columbus, Ohio, and we have them in New Orleans, not New Orleans. I think it might be New Orleans and Texas, and all around, and everybody. Nobody needs to participate in the greater big events. We have smaller events than the convention around the world all year round. We have conferences. We had one recently on headphone technology and augmented reality, and we have them on spatial audio around the world. And those are smaller events that are much more in depth. We did one, I believe, last year. On archiving, and took place at the Library of Congress, and it was a tremendous event there. So, and automotive has its own conference, so you go and look at how the science of putting audio in cars is going. So, I guess to skip ahead now to what my other angle is that you are. The proper question to ask isn't what do I get out of it.
Yeah.
Really, it's why are you interested in audio in the first place? This is something that I have learned over decades, because if you say you want to record bands for a living, well, be careful what you wish for, because you'll be doing that forever, and everything gets old. So if you can sort of find your happy place, so to speak. I don't mean make you happy, but what gives you personal satisfaction, and this helps you be an audio person, just all around. And our mission statement for AES that I wrote, I was very proud of this. It's not about giving something to the members. It's audio, the business, the craft, the whole thing. I say our mission statement is promoting the growth, knowledge, and appreciation of the science and art of audio. That's what this is. It's not about how can I make life better for Kyle, because life better for everybody. It naturally makes life better for Kyle and for me. I think that's the thing we have to remember, is that we're not just doing it for ourselves. I mean, why are you interested in audio? Are you creating your own work? Is that your main focus? There's no value judgment on any of these goals. However, if you're you're creating songs, great. Then you're looking at different things about audio that will help you generate those songs. If you're like I was, recording other people, it's a whole different kind of discipline. And I love that Kyle does talk a lot about capturing the sound at the source. I still feel like that's very important. But I've got plenty of thoughts on all this stuff. But I love anybody who's serious enough about it to think about it and try to make their understanding of it better and create their own personal satisfaction in our field, whether it's making copies, or mixing somebody else's tracks, or recording your own songs. I found working in a recording studio with bands really satisfying, but in those days, nobody else knew how to do it except a few of us. And I find people 50 years later who say, man, you made my record. And they're just so excited to remember those times. And it creates a wonderful feeling. I don't care if it wasn't a hit. It really, really made a difference in the musicians' lives who had put a lot into the music. Now but that being said, I also really enjoyed creating, sonic pictures. I did funny radio commercials. I loved doing that. I loved acting in them. I loved creating them. I loved staging them. I had a creative partner who had wonderful ideas. I didn't have to come up with them from scratch, but it would be my job to help realize them and get that message across in audio. That's what I think all of us are trying to do, is get a message to come out of the speaker, whether it's musical message, a persuasive message.
And it varies, but as everybody can tell, Bill's very passionate about a lot of parts of audio.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's okay. What I'm saying is that even in a small town, or even in a medium city like St. Louis, I rarely run into people in my everyday life where they're just they get it and they believe in it and they have passion about it as well. But every single time we go and have a Monday meeting, or we have one of the hangs that JD puts together, everyone there gets it, And so I think that's definitely one element. I do want to get deeper into the networking. I know you said don't think necessarily about what is in it for you, but I think when you're starting a career, it can be difficult to not focus on that, right?
Yes,
but there are some mistakes I want to talk to people about, because when I went to my first AES section meeting, and then when I went to my first few conventions, I walked in there thinking, all right, this is my chance. I spent the money to get here. I'm spending the money on the hotel to be here. I've got to make something happen during this. And I think that's a really, really bad way to go about it. You don't have to make something happen. In fact, in your local section meetings, I think just being a face that shows up in front of these people in the community works wonders, because eventually you're going to get into a conversation with these people. If you're outgoing, maybe it'll happen the first time. But if you're shy like me, there is value in just showing up in these places, right?
You suddenly are the face that's there. Of course, that's what happened to me. There weren't that many people at all, but I was always at a recording session. When I couldn't be the engineer, or when I wasn't, I was there. I was the kid who would wind up microphone cables and sweep the floor and open the door and run for Diet Coke. Not Diet, we didn't have Diet then. I'd run for Coca-Cola, and I would, troubleshoot, move microphones for the engineer and all that stuff, because there was a lot more physical work to be done in that kind of situation. We had a big studio, and we were doing music. We were doing soundtracks for movies. We had high-speed tape duplication. We cut records in the Neumann lathe. We pressed them in the basement, plated them in the basement. It was a big... We just did a little of everything. We had a sound stage and made movies, so there was always activity. And there were people there would come to this studio to do their thing. And it became the place where, if you were an advertising agency or an independent producer, you needed to have a relationship with some of us at the place, at Technosonic Studios. And it was just a wonderful community all around. And we keep trying to create these things in real life. And now that we have the technology to get awfully darn close, the way this is, it really is close. But you still, another thing I think that Kyle and I talked about the other day, that some of these things you benefit by all being in them together at the same time. Am I right there, Kyle? I mean, we talked about it in the context of listening.
We did. And let's talk about that a little bit later, but in this context, what are you feeling?
Yeah. I'm just saying that we remember the same things. We have a common bond that the few of us who were able to go down to Columbia and saw the $500 million restoration of the Missouri University Athletic Department. Now that they're in the SEC, they've literally $500 million they're putting into the stadium.
And the audio engineer there that's played a large role in that,
He's one
he
of our members.
welcomed our section to go over there and
Absolutely.
take a look, take a
Yeah.
tour. Similar to
Terrific.
what Mac did over in San Francisco.
Yeah,
I want to say though, you were talking about being one of the faces, but that's nice, especially when you're in a context where you can demonstrate your skills and your awareness.
Well, that's
right?
even better.
That's even better. But there is not much cable wrapping going on at the AES section meeting. I think though it's okay. It's important for people to know that it's not audio, especially working in audio. If there's one thing I've realized, it's that everybody starts to become a familiar face. It's a pretty small community, even on a global scale. Mm-hmm. And everybody you talk to, within reason, there are some probably that aren't so nice, but everybody you talk to seems to be pretty cool. And this is a conversation I've had with other guests, which is, why is that? Is there some element of it that technical prowess only gets you so far? You kind of need to be what people call a good hang. And being in those section meetings allows you to demonstrate that you are bearable to be around and that you are friendly, right?
Plus, you're a sound person, and you're always there. If you're there all the time, that sort of implies the reliability and steadiness that you want if you're hiring somebody, whether it's for a job or for a single job or whatever. I can tell you that after I quit my full-time role at Technosonic, it was like 1986, and I started this thing here in my house, and but I was still freelance when people would ask for me, which was quite a bit, but when you're freelancing, you just are helping people. This is what you do, and you have to be able to deliver, not just in terms of quality. Think of a client, or even you, since you're the boss of your own self. If you're a freelancer and you're doing your own product, would you rather, is it better to take a month to do something that's 2% better or 1% better? Or on the other side, if you're hiring somebody, I want somebody I know is there, who's pleasant, who will get it done, is a professional, even though maybe, if all things being equal, if this other fella happens to be there and happens to get it done, it might be a little bit better, but I can't be sure it's going to be finished. And that's a really important thing. You need to be reliable, and this is true of any freelance business. And we're all smaller entities now. That's the biggest change I can see in the business, is that the bigger entities have gotten bigger and the smaller entities have gotten smaller. So you're either working for Disney or Pixar, or one of our members here in St. Louis just recently rented my U87 back there to record for Inside Out 2. He recorded Phyllis Smith, but I've known him for 40 years, and he is just a good, solid guy, and all of our members that come all the time, they become audio people. I mean, that's how I used to get jobs when I was a teenager. Bill's the sound guy. We'll get him. I didn't have any experience. Somebody says, well, I've got a film shoot. We need somebody to do sound. They didn't call a film sound person. They said, well, Bill, he knows about sound. He's interested. He'll do it. Yeah. And I would figure out what I needed to figure out to do that. It's the same thing, the stadium shows, we had Super Jam 76. They didn't, there wasn't this big specialty thing for people.
And there is now, but I think it's
now
still that structure of the AES. It still plays a role because my first live sound internship I got because I had been to the meetings as a student member, and then I became aware of Iron Man, and and started
Bob was great. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that
Bob
all plays a really
he was a student
big
too.
role.
He was a student.
Yeah, right. At same university. Speaking of that, so let's pivot a little bit to where I first met you, and it was in a class that I think was really important. It was called Audio Aesthetics, and basically, to give everybody a rundown, what it was is Bill would come in with his gigantic briefcase filled with CDs, and he'd plop it down, and he would put something forward every once in a while, and let's listen to this, and let's talk about what we hear. But then, of course, every week for class, you would also allow the students to bring in their own not their own projects necessarily, but even better if
that
you can
was
get a
not off
project.
limits. That was
Yeah, if you
fine,
could
too.
get a product though, or I'm sorry, a mix that you, even if you didn't like it, play it and discuss why you didn't like it, or if you did like it, play it and discuss what you did like, and maybe try to hypothesize how different techniques were used. Tell us a little bit about what that class
That class,
was.
when I conceived that class, I took it over from, it was the very early 2000s, from Bill Porter, who was the first recording engineer inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I believe. He recorded Elvis, and he taught there at the university. Kyle, he was Justin's favorite professor at the time, and I think Henrik was in his class and some other people, Lee. But we had, they asked me to take this over because Bill was aging out of the whole thing. But his thing had been a much more, when I say critical, I mean a different kind of thought process for listening. He would try to get, much like the ear training, it was trying to do the same kind of thing that you folks are trying to do with the ear training. I listened to that program last week. It was really great. But what he was doing is he would play like a record, and what microphone did they use? Well, that I didn't care about that, and I didn't even care whether you liked something or not. To me, the point was to listen to everything, whether it was a commercial, a movie, a game, or anything that created sound, or even in real life. That's a funny thing that happened, and talk about talk about A, how it sounds, B, why does it sound like that, and then why would you want it to sound like that or not, and how would the effect of the recording be? I mean, in other words, the effect of the message being sent change if the sound were different.
Yeah.
And that's what the idea wasn't to say, "Oh, this is no good. We don't like this. This is no good." It was to analyze the sound of it, and we would take into account maybe some of the technical limitations of the time. But at that time, I thought it was very important that we would listen to whole projects in their entirety. We would listen to Dark Side of the Moon. I always tried to listen to that all the way through. Tried to listen to Pet Sounds. That's only 33 or 4 minutes. And Sgt. Pepper is another one, and newer ones as they would come in. And I learned so much by experiencing those playbacks with the students. And this is what I was getting at earlier, was experiencing these together. It's similar to the difference between going to a movie theater and experience a screening rather than sitting down on your couch and watching it. Well, you have seen the movie, and I'm not even talking about the quality of the picture and the sound. I'm talking about the experience of sharing that experience with an audience together. And that shows you a different effect. It really shines a light on what things work, how they work, and why they work, and will illuminate your satisfaction going forward. Because I can't emphasize enough, the important thing is to be happy with not happy, but satisfied with what you're doing, knowing that you are doing a good job. You are getting done what you're trying to do. You want to be able to sleep at night. And I'm very proud of the recordings that I made 50 years ago.
Getting back, though, to that cinema analogy, I don't want to get too far from that, because I think that there's another element of going to the cinema with friends, which is that after the show, you discuss what you think things meant and right? And this is something that I believe in our current world, we have so much access to information, right? I mean, anybody who watches Audio University, there are hours and hours and hours of footage of information
really good
of
information.
me talking.
I got to emphasize that. I've been very pleased with that.
And though I try to be personable and make you feel like it's a in-person experience in my videos, I'm not really there with you. I mean, and so you're not going to come back to me and tell me you had this subjective experience and me try to map that into my own subjective experience. But in a classroom, we did. And this is also something Carl Napa has mentioned to me, another St. Louis member, that when he thinks back to some of the most formative parts of his upbringing, he got started up in New York, it was the sitting in a room listening to a record with his friends. They didn't even have to be audio friends, but just to sit and experience that together. There's the energy, and then there's the sharing and comparing of that experience verbally afterward.
Exactly, and just the experience, you can sense other people experiencing it at the same time. I mean, people don't sit and listen to a record very often anymore. I don't do it as much as I used to, but I have a big old analog system, my old Macintosh system. Kyle's seen it, and I still have it, and I got to admit, I don't fire it up very often. But when I do, it's always very satisfying. But you need to sit down and experience the thing washing over you, and experience the communication with the artist or the creator, whatever you want to call that, the people who put this thing together, even with an artist. Now, and if you're an audio person, you might appreciate the mix in a different way than somebody who's listening to it who doesn't really care about the mix. I might care about it. You might care about it. We could talk about it, and maybe we can sort of make that connection. How do those little nuances affect the average listener or any listener that we're looking at? I remember early in the mid-'70s, we were the first people in the world that had a working automated console with EQ and reverbs, and all of that stuff was all automated. API built it, automated processes built it for us. And it was really wonderful. And I remember the first listening, when I'd listen to records, I remember very clearly the first record I knew was mixed with automation. First couple of records. A couple of them were, I can't remember the name of the album, but it was a Art Garfunkel album. And then there was one that really made a difference to me, even in the car, was Olivia Newton-John, Please, Mr. Please. I don't know if you've ever heard this. But what happens when it goes to the hook, the chorus, now we take this kind of thing for granted. Everything sort of changes. The door opens, and you're in a different sonic space, not just reverb, whatever. It just all feels different. At least that was my impression of it. And I thought that was very important, but nobody, unless you're an audio person, you wouldn't get that. But you can react to these things in real time. And again, if Kyle is sitting next to you, he's going to have a different kind of way of critiquing your mix than if he's listening to it trying to write up a critique. Yep. And I've used to judge mix competitions a lot. It's very difficult to listen to something and then create meaningful feedback. It's difficult. They do a great job, Gabe and Kyle both. But I know how hard that is. But you can't really react to what's happening. The same thing if you're teaching in a class. If you're a good professor, you'll be sensing what is interesting your students at that moment. And sometimes you just leave everything you were going to say behind. Of course, my problem is I try to squeeze everything in every time. So I can't tell you how important it is to just breathe it, live it and breathe it. I mean, and don't let some of these, all these technical things that you're learning in the audio university, most of them, most of them, they're all important, but they don't have to be in the top of your mind every single second. Mm-hmm. You need to be aware of how to solve problems. But if there's no problem to be solved, keep going. This is my only old guy rant.
Okay.
Is that too many people start with all the plugins and the processing and the plans for reverbs and all this stuff, and all of this stuff is very useful, but you might not need all of it. And I'm just, it's like your mom would say about salt. If you need salt, put it on there. I don't have any problem with that. But there's no need.
Well, and I think that, that's a really good point, Bill, tying back to the listening class that you had, mm-hmm. which is that in school, we learned a lot about the tools and the techniques, mm-hmm. and I think that was really important. Sure. But if you don't have the ability to know where you are and where you want to be, then you might end up just toiling with these tools rather than actually using them intentionally. So sitting in class with you allowed us to actually put words and meaning to what we were hearing in the music, and say, this is something I want to achieve, or this is something I want to get away from, and then you start looking at the techniques and tools to do so.
Your own aesthetic. This is the thing. And, unless all you're interested in is making mixes that sound like everybody else, which is a legitimate thing if you're talking about just making money and all this competitive stuff. But if you're creating something, you want to be happy with it. I don't want to do this just because, well, everybody does this. Well, okay. The thing is, if you're mixing something to sound like it's 20, whatever this is, 2025,
Yeah.
guess what? Next year it's going to be 2026, and the year after that's going to be 2027. And people, if you have busted your tail making it sound like right now, that's so last year. That's not the same thing we get now. So you want to make sure that when you're creating your product, whether you're getting it, and all of the tools that we have are very helpful, but don't get ahead of yourself, and they're not going to solve all your problems. What they're going to do is help you make decisions, and I want you to make good decisions. Kyle wants you to make good decisions, and I want you to be happy that you're an audio person and can promote the growth, knowledge, and appreciation of it to everybody else. This is what we try to do in Audio Engineering Society, is just to try to make the whole discipline something that other people should care about, because too much now, the sound is just like way in the back seat. There are too many things. Well, just, all the jobs we used to get that are now just covered by people standing there with phones. And it's not as good, but it's so much easier. Well, it's not worth it. That's what people say. But what we need to do is make them understand that it is worth it. It is worth it that your mix is clean and has everything in it that you want it to have.
And spending time with people who also see the value and hear the value in that. I think that's half the battle. We have some questions, Bill. Let's get somebody up here.
I'm ready.
We've got a member, Kareem. Kareem, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
I'm doing pretty good. So what's your question? I saw you had one about AES.
Good deal.
What do you think?
Yeah, I was just looking at the website, and I saw that there are a couple different ways to register, like as a member, or as an associate member, or as a student. Now, I just wanted to ask you if you could talk about what are the experience or education requirements to register as a member versus as an associate member.
It's a great question, and I think a lot of people don't join because they might think the bar is too high, and that's not the case at all. The fact is, you can go on there right now and click a few clicks, and you can become an associate member. That's what everybody starts at, and after a couple of weeks or whatever in being a member, I think the automation will send you an email. The other thing, AES is a bunch of huge restructuring, so the website is not what it's going to be in hopefully a few months, and not what it was a year ago. But in any case, you join as an associate. You can participate in the only thing you can't do as an associate is vote for people like me. There's not that many people care that much. So we have a lot of associate members who live and breathe audio just like the other folks do. They just haven't bothered to find a couple people who would recommend them. That's really what it amounts to, is you join as an associate member. I think the dues are the same. So you just, at least they used to be, and you join as an associate member, and if that's fine, that's fine. Although we always want you to be a member because we want you to participate in the governance of the society, and we want you to have an input in that kind of thing. But we just want to include you. This is a big thing for us, is trying to get people into the fold, so to speak. So you would join as an associate member, and then you'd graduate up to, all you do really after a little while is ask, and you can check out the requirements. Or if you are fortunate enough to live in a city that has a local section, if you go to a couple of those meetings, I guarantee you within a short period of time, your section chair is going to come to you and say, hey, what, you want to be a member? We see you come to the meetings all the time. You clearly know what you're talking about. I'll recommend you. He will recommend you. She will recommend you. And you put those three names on the form, send it in, and all is well. That's great. Now there's see, if you're lucky enough to hang on forever, like I am, I'm a life member. So that really doesn't mean anything other than I'm a life member. And I I think we might get some of the dues taken care of in some of the events, but that's not
So
the
yeah, I
reason.
mean, you can join as associate member. There's really no education requirements. That's
Well,
one thing
yeah.
that I wanted to also mention, though, is that if you are a high school student or college student, there is a student membership.
That's what it's gonna go for
You'll need
next.
to have a copy of a current student ID with the date. You'll have to have a letter from your college or university verifying your enrollment, etc. But that's how I got started, and I think that's how a lot of people get started. Are you a member of an institution currently, Kareem, or no?
I'm not a member of an institution currently, but I will be studying next year, but not audio related. But I will be
Okay.
in school.
Yeah, we're working on those requirements. We now don't require you to be a part of a student chapter, student section. Many universities don't have a big enough audio program to support a whole group of students as a section. Now, our student sections hold events as well. They hold events and do a tremendous job. Some of the sections are very active with events, and they come to the convention together, and they have speakers come in. So that's really good. But I'd have to check.
I'm
I
not
think
sure
we
if you
might
have to be a part of an audio program or not. Is
No,
it just
you don't.
being a college
As far as
student?
I know,
Okay.
you do not need to be part
So,
of an audio
Kareem, I mean,
program.
that might be a good option for you. If not, I think associate would be the way to go. And if you are going to be a part of an audio educational institution, high school or college, then I think getting the student membership would
Yes,
make a lot
we
of
are
sense.
working on getting more high school students starting earlier to get them aware of it, and getting the local sections aware of it to reach out to them and to incorporate their activities in what we do. And we have sometimes we'll have camps, recording camps, and the kids are coming in and seeing it all happen, and that's all great. And I'm not even sure how much proof you need for the student section, student membership. I also will tell you there is really no education requirement, period. You don't have to have a college degree to become a member. I think it's pretty much I don't even think it's as strict as the Grammys are. Now with the Grammys, you have to have anybody can be an associate member. You can go to Grammy.org right now and join, or is it Grammy.org, or used to be NARIS, but you can join as an associate member, and then I don't know what they call it, but you don't vote. Of course, that's what everybody wants to do, is vote. In order to be a voting member, you need a certain number of credits, which is always changing, and their definition of an album credit is different than it used to be.
But I think for AES, I mean,
For
the
AES,
the
there's
voting
really-
rights, that's not really, I think, what drew me to it.
Absolutely
And
it isn't.
Kareem, I mean,
And
I'm
it
telling you,
shouldn't
it may seem like intimidating at first, like, oh, what kind of education? Am I going to be out of place? Do I know enough? But it's super chill. And I would recommend if you have a section near you, then join it.
Do
and-
reach out to
yeah.
them. Or if you want, what general part of the United States or the world are you?
I'm in Toronto, Canada, and I know that there's a section in Toronto. I just looked
Well,
at
I know there is, yeah. And we've been looking at trying to move the automotive conference to Toronto. But now you're not in my region. They're in the eastern region. But Angela, I know, would love to help you. And I don't know personally the chair in Toronto, but they would. I know they would. They have events. They put on a lot of great events. Because if you do sign up as an associate member, you'll get the Loop, which is the weekly summary of events that local sections are doing. And now a lot of them are online, so you can you can see them like what we're doing here. Now a lot of them aren't. If it's a tour of the local planetarium or the stadium or something, obviously you can't do that. Chicago is always great to go to the Shure factory and see their anechoic chamber and things like that. But you'll be amazed at how welcoming and eager they are to welcome you in, because we always want more people just like us. This is one of the reasons you go to school too, is you go to a class. I guarantee you, later in your life, you don't run into a room full of people who care about this stuff. You just won't. And you talk, and they look at you like, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Quiet now. And I understand that, but I enjoy talking to people who get what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And who really care about the same kinds of things. So
And Kareem, I mean, you're a member. That's basically what we're trying to do, right, with the membership. And I hope that you
Absolutely.
feel that way when you get into the membership area or we're on a live event. It's like everybody here, okay, they get it, and it's harder to find people locally. Although in Toronto there are probably a ton of people.
Yes,
But I think becoming a part of that would really help. So thank you for your question. I appreciate it.
yes, and please reach out. I mean, I'm just Bill S at AES.org. If you have a personal question, you can ask me anything, and I'll try to help you. I usually know who will help you, even if I can't do it. But
We do have another person up here, Chase. Chase, can you hear us right now?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for
great
joining.
now.
What's your question about the AES?
Yeah, so I'm essentially a total beginner. I'm a little bit older. I've already graduated from college.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated with a completely different degree than this kind of stuff. It was more in athletics based, and I was trying to get a full-time job in there, but it just hasn't worked out. So I started working as a stagehand at my
Oh,
local
great.
theater with the university, and I've kind of just always had a little bit of a uh, good ear, I would guess. So audio has kind of interested me, and I'm kind of thinking about switching careers. Most of my free time I'm watching Kyle's videos and I'm looking up
Uh-huh.
stuff and reading books, which is awesome, and I'm loving it so far. So just kind of talk about as a total beginner, what would be the benefits of the AES, and would you recommend attending, the meetings and such?
First,
I
let me
certainly
ask you,
would.
Chase,
Yeah.
what would be your vision for working in the
Yeah,
audio?
great
Because one
question.
thing that you find going to an AES convention, like we said before, there are like bona fide scientists.
Sure.
There are film audio people. There are live sound people. There are people who work in studios. There's people who do voiceover. Which of those, even if it's multiple of those, sound interesting to you?
Honestly, I think live sound.
Nice.
The guy, as our engineer at the theater, is very knowledgeable and very helpful, and he's kind of already started to help me out a little bit. So
Yeah.
I'm very interested in what he's doing.
I think personally that's one of the easiest and most reliable ways to get into the industry. I think what you'll learn in live sound is applicable to different areas, but
Sure.
it's for me it makes a lot of sense getting into the industry because usually a company does live sound and you can go intern for that company.
Yes.
Whereas being a freelancer, there's not really internship opportunities as much,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and you run into a lot more professionals who started that or starting that way now because when I started making recordings, everybody wanted to be a studio engineer, but there weren't any studios. And now everybody is a studio, and nobody needs. You don't need people hanging around because most freelance audio people don't have sessions, so they don't need anybody's help. And if you're like, well, students ask me all the time, do you have any internships? I say, well, I just don't know what my schedule is. I don't want to be responsible for figuring out something for you to do every time you show up, but you're always welcome. That's what I always tell people. But live sound is also a great place to develop that sense of reliability that I talked about earlier. Because the show goes on, man. You have to deliver, and whether it's making sure everything's plugged in properly or swept up afterwards, or if they put you in charge of mixing the guitar leads, that's something that you have to deliver on, and they have to have confidence that you will. And I think that's really important. And A, it's an important skill to have, and B, it's very important reputation to develop. And then you're there. Your face is there. You are there, and you just don't know. I mean, I'm not going to go into the whole story, but essentially, what happened to me after being a kid, always being there. One day there was a session that was too big a deal. The engineer, who I was shadowing at the time, helping him, he didn't want to do it. It was too much work. And he just says, well, Bill's here. He can do it. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what will happen if people get that you're there all the time, you're ready to go, and you'll make sure the thing happens. You might not do it the same way the veteran would. It might turn out a little differently, but you're not going to let the job be unprofessional. That's really the thing about being a professional.
I think also, Chase, which part of the world do you live in?
I live in Iowa, United
Okay.
States.
Nice. So, I mean, for me, just to give you a rundown, is that another good thing about live sound is that you can get in at the ground level, or I guess I should say there are entry level positions such as preparing equipment for the show, right? You don't have to go in with a resume, because otherwise it becomes sort of this chicken or the egg situation, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't have any experience, but I need experience, and I need experience to get experience.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. But if you are going to go work at a warehouse and scan microphones and test speakers when they come back, that can put you in those positions where you're interacting with people. You're able to learn from mentors at that stage, which is huge. And then for me, it was from working in the warehouse to going out on my first show as an assistant. And I would, put up microphones, and the engineer would place them. And at the end of the night, I'd clean things up. And eventually you get sent out on a show by yourself, and so on, right? And I think it's just a really nice way to start.
Absolutely what happens. And people don't understand that so many interns that I tried to work with before we had these programs, and before younger people joined AES, people said, I'm going to come and intern with you. Right? So we didn't have interns at the time, but if you want to come and help, that's great. The session's at 8 o'clock. Well, I'm there at 7:30 setting everything up, right? These people, they saunter in at 8 o'clock, and then all they see is me pushing the red button. And then the musicians say, well, that's it, we're done. And they walk out, so does this intern. And they don't understand why I didn't just scoot over and let them sit down and do the thing. You really need to learn the work. And this is another thing that you'll learn by watching professionals in a live sound situation. I'm sure this was your case, Kyle. You see them under pressure. You see them delivering.
Yeah.
They have to get this work done.
Yeah.
And you have a different sense of responsibility. I mean, even when we used to make radio and television commercials all the time, there's an air date. You have to, if it's not, the important thing about the mix is that it's finished, not whether there's enough bass.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to care if the bass would have sounded just right if there's nothing.
If there's no show, yeah. Well, I'm sure,
and
Chase,
that's
you're
really-
already experiencing that in the theater, right? You can see this mentor of yours in these stressful situations.
Oh, stagehands are the real deal.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah,
professionals.
absolutely.
That's actually another route. If there's a stagehand company near you, or if there's like an opportunity to be an overhire for like an IATSE union, that was something I did for a while.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
That's harder to break into, but if you can get in as an extra board, extra union person, that they will when people call and need a union technician, they will just call and you'll go. You'll get the call. If you're in that pool and everybody knows, hey, this guy shows up, he gets it done, and that's what stagehands are known for. Man, they're known for delivering. And it's very satisfying to make sure the show goes well, whether it's music or a stage show or lighting, all that stuff. And it's very similar to what we do in AES. A lot of people don't appreciate. I mean, it's not that they don't appreciate it, but they don't see what we see. They don't hear what we hear, and that we care about it. The people are hiring us to make these compromises and to use our best judgment and make the sound as best as it could be. It's not necessarily, executing what the artist wants. It's delivering what they want. That's really it. And I love that. My favorite thing to do is deliver something that a creative person, whether it's a writer, producer, or an artist, delivering something to them that's better than I thought it could be. And that is just a wonderful feeling.
Well, and it's cool being a part of that, Chase, right? I mean,
Yeah.
have you had any experiences yet, Chase, where you have set up a show that you're like, wow, I didn't realize I was capable of playing a part in something like that?
Yeah, definitely. And especially on like the first couple days, I was kind of wide-eyed, not really knowing where my place was. And I just said, where can I help? And
that sounds like
they
half
just-
the battle right there.
Yeah,
Because I think so
yeah.
many people show up, again, feeling like they need to prove that they are valuable, when really, when you're out there trying to put out fires on a live sound stage, what's most valuable is somebody who is open to the idea that they can learn and somebody who's asking, how can I help? So
Yeah, I definitely.
How can I help? That's the key. Doesn't matter what it is. It's the same thing with a recording session. How can I help? Well, gosh, I need that over there. If that's all it is, suddenly then it's another insight into the main engineer or the person in charge's thought process. They like having that there. This is and you learn these decision trees, and you don't get bogged down in the problem with learning too much too early with all these technical options is not that they're wrong or anything, but you have to sort through them every time. And if you're doing it manually, it's almost like, say, riding a bicycle, or I always like to say it's like flying an airplane. When I learned to fly, the hardest thing is landing an airplane, but it turns out it's really easy. The problem, what was getting in my way, was all the little things I'm trying to make sure I'm aware of at the time. But sooner or later, it just happens, and you need to see these processes, these thought processes, and to
this reminds me of something I want to. Chase, thank you, by the way, for the question.
Thank you, Chase.
But I want to also mention, hopefully you're still listening, learn from your mentor, but in audio there's 1,000 ways to do everything.
Absolutely.
So don't get too caught up in the way your mentor taught you. I've learned to wrap a cable from 10 different people, and they all do it different or something. I've learned to put a mic on a snare drum from 100 different people, and 99 or 100 of those techniques are useful still. Don't be stubborn like that. I want to also just say, for those watching or just joining, there's a link down below. You can't click the link that's on the screen here, but this comment can be found down below the video. If you join us, or if you want to join us on stage and ask a question about AES, just click that link and I'll bring you up.
Whoever just made that comment, I didn't see. I was going to say, if you're from Iowa, I think we're in the process of trying to start an Iowa section. But you should really try to find out if there's a section in your area, talk to somebody, and everybody wants to make your audio life the best it can be, which helps all of us. It really does. I mean, we're not necessarily competing with each other because there's so much work to be done. Nobody can do it all anyway. So it's not a zero-sum game. And we all pretty much try to help each other, I think. And it really ends up being a wonderful thing to think about all the time. I mean, occasionally you'll go nuts because you can't really listen to a piece of music while in the background because you're listening too closely. To this day, I can't do it. I mean...
But I think it's good that people who are like that, Bill, are the people doing the work. And this is something you and I have talked about. And sadly, I mean, I think that live sound, it's still a very viable career. Sadly, I'll be honest with everybody. It's getting maybe not less possible, but it's becoming different, I think, becoming a person in this industry. And I think a large driver of that is because I'm a content creator and I know audio stuff because I'm an audio content creator, but there are hundreds of other content creators who are not audio people, and they are the people doing the audio for a lot of the media that's being consumed. Whereas if you go back 30, 50 years, every piece of media being consumed is being created and produced by somebody who's an expert in that field. And I think that comes across really. I think, though, let me tie that back into where we were.
Please do.
Which is that.
I'm sorry, I'll just go all day. So you talk.
No. It's. I know you're going to love this, Bill, because you and I have talked about it a lot. But tying it back in, not being able to allow, becoming sidetracked by something sounding bad, is what this is all about. And too many people are producing media right now who don't have that ailment. They can just listen to bad, distorted audio and not even know anything's wrong with it.
No, it's all that, yeah.
So, I mean, I think that also ties back into what AES is, because we all are sort of in that boat.
And that's really true, because if you care about this stuff, you start listening to things in a different way, and you expect other people to care as much as you do. Yeah. I mean, I have this experience listening to the baseball games on the radio. It was show business. We would make radio commercials. We would have actors and producers and musicians, and we would do all this stuff. And this is a radio commercial. It's on the radio. Now it's just somebody hands them a piece of copy and they read it off the iPad, and if they don't say the F word, it's okay, and they just take all the breathing out, which, by the way, don't get me started on that, and then they speed it all up so it fits into the time allotted. Nobody cares about doing it again. Maybe you could do it again and do it right this time. No, it's not worth it. So you hear this stuff, and people's standards slowly are lowered, and what we're constantly battling to is to promote the appreciation thereof. And I also mean the value of the actual result of our product, because people will tell me, for example, well, nobody can tell the difference between MP3 and a wave. No, why mess with it? And I don't. The thing is, what I argue is, if I play them back to back for you, you will hear the difference. You will hear the difference. Now, then the question really is it worth the difference to you and to your client and to everybody else? This is why I don't like to send MP3s of anything that I've done for anybody. I like to send the best thing I can, and then I have to forget about it, but once I send them an MP3, nobody's ever going to ask me for the wave again. It's going to sit on my computer, and nobody will ever hear it that way. At least there's a shot when I give it a chance. I'm going to jump into this because I wanted to mention this, because one of the things you have to realize about your product is you have to be happy with it when it leaves your room, whatever you're listening to, however you're creating it, because I like to. If you ever think of it, I think the reason we call it a release is it's out there now. We lose control of it. I don't care how carefully you balance your bass and fix your the phase relationships, all this stuff that's nothing. And I'm not saying you shouldn't care about that, but if you obsess about that, no one else will. So you have to get it out there in the best shape it can be, because after that, who knows what happens? It's released. A radio station will just play one channel. They'll play the left side and monoize it, or it'll be backwards, for crying out loud. I can't believe all the things that people will do. And you go to somebody's house, and the left speaker's in the kitchen and the right speaker's in the bedroom. You can't control that, so you have to be happy with it. I'm not a big believer in how do you mix for records, how do you mix for MP3s. I don't care, because when you put it out, the people who are sending it to the next step, they're the ones. They will do what they do to it. I guarantee you, Spotify doesn't take the file you give them and put it on the stream. That's just not what happens. They take it and they do what they have to do to deliver it to their customers, because that's their job is to make the customers happy, and the listeners want all of them to sound the same. Period. So if you figure out a way that's going to make your mix stand out on Spotify, well, forget it. Spotify will do whatever they do to make it sound the same, because that's what they're trying to avoid, calls from their customers saying, how come this sounds a lot too loud or too soft or whatever it is. They will make sure it's right. It's the same way with records. When you cut the record, you do it the best you can, but it's going to play differently. Everything is different. So
yeah, it's never finished. It's only abandoned, right?
Exactly. Well, that's really a great way to look at it. So you want to abandon it in the very best shape you can, so that you're happy, so that you can at least go out and say, man, I heard your mix on the radio. That's kind of weird. I said, well, it wasn't weird when it left here. It's the way I wanted it. And then, all bets are off. There's no radios. That's why, I don't know, I'm not even going to get into this whole idea of bus compression and all this crap, because all that stuff happens later, and people get used to that. And if you send out something that's over-processed too early, it's going to do nothing but be compounded. But I mean, I can. It's
well,
not that it
I think
doesn't
that
have any
it's so easy to do that, though, because you see all these videos that say to do this, and it may be a good technique, but you're just not sure how it all fits together. And then meanwhile, you've got, talk about the MP3 and the wave effect. If you want to hear the difference between MP3 and wave, train yourself by only listening to wave for a while, and then we listen to an MP3. In contrast, it'll sound much different depending on the bit rate. But I also wanted to say that in a world where a lot of YouTube content is produced at a mediocre level, I think it's important to have mentorship now by professionals than ever before, because it's
Absolutely.
so easy to make a record beginning to end sitting alone in my chair right here at home. But if I hadn't learned to hear these details, and if I hadn't seen my mentors keep fixing things when I thought it was completely perfect, I would have never learned I would have never risen the standard to when things are ready, right? And I'm still learning today. You can listen to my early YouTube videos, and they don't sound nearly as good as they do today. But I think it's just that ties into the AES theme, because having mentorship is something I feel like we need to think about right now. We have a lot of access to producing music, and that's good, but I don't want it to become a bunch of people who are just sort of like faking it till they make it. There's an order of things, and it's important to learn from people who've been in it a while.
Going to turn out consistent quality work, which is what I'm talking about, a professional career here, which is what you have done, Kyle. Now you make these videos all the time on a very consistent, high-quality basis, well-researched and planned. It's fantastic. So that is what you have found is a really great thing. And I'm sure it's very satisfying for you, as it is for me, when somebody as great as Kyle tells me they really appreciated what happened in our class. This really makes me very happy, and you're going to run into that because I still learn from him. So it's one of those things, we all learn everything as we go along and figure out what's important to us. And yes, you do want to be successful, but not at the expense of your, I don't want to say integrity, that's no good, but not at the expense of your personal satisfaction. You want to know that you did everything you could and to reach your goal. It's one thing for the client to point out a mistake, but it's horrible if you knew there was a mistake and you let it go. That's awful. And it's professional. That's the only word I can use is why do you hire a professional? Because it will deliver what they promise on time and on budget. That's the goal. I mean, I could go to Home Depot and buy a pile of wood and some nails and deck screws and try to figure it out and build a deck. I probably could in a couple of months, but if I want a deck, I call a professional. They come out in 2 days and it's up there and it's perfect. So, and it's like this: if your hobby is messing with the equipment and creating something that you like, this is great. There's nothing wrong with this. Is what but this is different than creating a career that's going to support you and your family. Because sooner or later, no matter how good you are at what you do, time catches up with you, and suddenly there are other people who are really good at it and who have more energy than you, who know more people than you do now, and all your friends are retired, and you're done. See, that's what I mean. I'm not quite done, but it's certainly slower than it used to be for me because there's no waiting list of people to get an hour of my time. So, I mean, I'm so pleased that that's worked out, because if you would have told me, I'm not going to go into that now, but I've been extremely fortunate that I loved all the jobs that I've had, whether it was editing video, doing lights at a show, mixing a big stadium concert, holding the boom mic over the actor. All of these things are really wonderful. I loved the equipment. I loved making that Nagra tape recorder work, but I also love making the computers work. I don't have any particular snob attitude about analog. Analog is a thing, and I don't know, we can get into all those arguments, but it's not an argument to me. It's another thing. It's like,
I think that ties in nicely to like what other value, as opposed to only quality control in a new a professional level or a professional standard. That's something you get from a mentor. But I think because technology has changed so much, if you think about it, the DAW is made after the tape machine. But people like me who just started in the middle of the DAW world, we never really saw those idiosyncrasies that come with the tape machine. So I think having a mentor also informs you. It's almost like passing down and continuing the whole reason tools today are as they are, right?
Well, thank you for mentioning that, because I mean, I appreciate this. And when I talk about some of the way we used to do things and the way the machines used to work, it's not that I necessarily think that's better. I just think that once you are aware of the evolution of our craft, I'm going to call it a craft. I'm not going to go all the way to art, but it's our craft because there's quite a bit of science involved and technical expertise and plain old mechanical work. Just cutting together 5 takes of a vocal. When I say vocal, I mean an announcer track, a voice-only track. That was a pretty big job. And we had lots of big jobs because that's just what you did. And it was very tedious by today's standards, but when we were doing it, it was like, look what we can do. This is amazing. Because there was a period of time you couldn't make an edit at all, much less easily. You know, if you were Bing Crosby, the reason Bing Crosby financed Ampex and brought the first tape recorder to market was so he wouldn't have to do multiple takes of his show. That is the reason. And you realize that all those early records, I mean, I'm talking now from the 40s even, were made without tape. Made without tape. They were recorded on disc, and they just picked the best one. Do you ever hear mistakes in them? No, you don't hear mistakes in them because they made sure there were no mistakes there. And now it's just easier and faster, and I don't know if it's necessarily better. In a lot of ways it's not, but in a lot of ways it is. So it's about the aesthetic choices that you make, putting forward the message of the communication. And this is something that I love to talk about. I don't have any particular philosophy for it, and certainly what I say nothing is set in stone. You don't have to do it the way I do it. I happen to do it, and I usually have reasons for why I do it, but not because it's better. It's because I like it better to do it this certain way. And I just want you to understand when I'm explaining, look, if I explain to Kyle and students how I go about it and what I use to do this and that and the other thing, that doesn't mean it's the only way or even the best way. It's the way I do it. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm successful because I'm still here in the business. Yeah. I'm not exactly George Massenberg, whom I met before the parametric equalizer.
But you're soon to be a fellow of the Audio
I
Engineering
am soon
Society.
to be his brother in the fellowship of the AES. Yeah, that's very cool. You know,
I
people
think
like
that,
Ray Dolby and geez.
I think that this understanding of the historical context of how these things came in. Before I wrote my video on the history of delay, I came over to your studio and I talked to you about the story because you saw a lot of it, right? And what I realized more than anything ended up becoming the topic, the overarching theme of that video, which is that innovations happened out of necessity. Innovations happened out of limitations. It wasn't like today you open up your plugins and it's like, all right, which of these 900 options do I want? And then once I'm in there, which of the 900 presets do I want? Well, there aren't that many obstacles today. And so we think we just need to noodle around. Whereas the delay came about because there was a problem or there was an intention that in order to reach it, we had to rig up this mechanical thing, right? And then that developed into the next thing. And almost everything you can possibly think of, everything that makes you feel emotion in music comes from a situation similar to that.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is I'm going to point this out to your audience here that, and I've spoken to Jeff Emmerich and Keith Scott and a lot of people about this. In the 60s, all the studios were equipped fairly much the same. Our studio was a lot like Abbey Road. So they didn't really have at their disposal anything different than we did. But what I'm getting at here is that a lot of the effects and tricks that you, so to speak, that are credited to certain places and engineers, they wouldn't take credit for those because we were all doing the same thing. It's just the idea of automatic doubling. I mean, this is something everybody was doing, but the first people who actually made it successful and visible were, the Beatles. So suddenly, that's it. And I'm happy to give them father of the effect
status
award, but inventor is not really accurate. And it's the same way with all these effects. And when you create you have, I don't know about if it's hundreds, but dozens of people around the world faced with the same issues, trying to make something sound like this or to do something different. And when the digital delay came in, it was so expensive. Oh my gosh! And then I talked to the boss and getting a device called the Delta Lab DDL1, I guess it was, and it was ridiculous expense. And I rigged it up to do something. I can't remember what it was. It was just a local guy had a song, and he was singing by himself, and it was a pretty good song, but then he would get to the chorus, and he was no good at doubling his voice. So we had to do something because he didn't want to
Needed a little something extra.
Needed something there. So I got this new device. I said, well, give me a chance here. We'll take the delay, and I'll put it over. And you could control it and bounce it back and forth. And so I created this. It was this machine, and I was thrilled with it. I thought, man, I'm a genius. We solved this. This will be great. I'll use it, and it's going to be my signature thing. And, wouldn't you know it, about a month and a half later, again, the radio comes on, and it's it was John Ferrar's production of Olivia Newton-John, Magic. Have to believe we are mad. You listen to that, it's the same thing. It's the same effect. I about drove off the road. But the point is that I'm probably, not only am I not the only one, there are probably 36 people who were lucky enough to get this device who figured out how to use it. And it's the same thing with the equalizers. Kyle and I were talking about this the other day. This ear training is very important to understand what you're doing. However, we didn't really think of it in terms of frequency because equalizers came into being because you had to actually wire the induction coils in the circuit to make it come out the other end the same. And that's why it's called an equalizer. And the phone company used them to pre-emphasis on the circuit before it got into the line so that on the other end it would sound what it's supposed to sound like. And then sooner or later they made that into variable controls, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And that happened because somebody understood the underlying technology, and then they understood the problem, and they thought, oh, you know what, that underlying technology could be repurposed in this way. Same as you did with the delay. And that's when I hear stories like this, it makes me think, oof. So how do we, if what I feel like is some of the best music ever made, if it was made out of limitations, what limitations do we face today, and how do we, what are our problems, what are our obstacles, and what's the move that pushes things forward? Because, you did not use that delay technique because you saw it on a YouTube video or because it was the proper way to do it.
And
you needed something.
Need to be that. I didn't know what it was going to be. And this is how we came into flanging. I had a band, this is well before even the Doobie Brothers used it on the, Listen to the Music is the famous thing that I'm talking about. But I had a client, I had a band came in, and they had a spot in the song where it was they were singing a harmony part, and it would be a long sustain, and they said, we need something to get it to lead into this guitar solo that's underneath, but we don't want to just have an effect. We want it to... Anyway, I spent all weekend with a rack-mounted couple AG 300 tape machines, Ampex ones, and you'd feed the same signal to both of them, and I took out the track with the chorus on it and submixed that and played it into these things, played them together, and then you literally hold your thumb on the flange of one of the...
slows it down a little bit.
It slows it down
up.
just ever so slightly, so the delay is... And I did it over and over and over again until I got a modulation effect that I liked, that worked. And then, once we had that, it was very exciting. I had to figure out a way to loop that or to do a slap back delay thing that would sort of decay into the song. So now you just turn the knob and say what it is. But I wanted to, and it would change. It would repeat and get worse in quality every time, which naturally happens with tape. But you had to sort of rig that all up.
Yeah, and it was based on an underlying understanding of how these things worked. When I slow down the tape, it decreases the pitch. It gets off track. That's sort of my point. Is I think there's a lot of value in me sharing ideas like side chain compression. I could make a video on a specific topic, but I think it's a lot more valuable if I make videos about the underlying concepts, so that next time somebody's in your position, they say, I need something. Well, actually, I know that when I slow the tape down, this happens, or anything, right? One thing that I did once for sharing stories is I was in live sound and there was a buzz happening on stage, and it was on both of our microphone channels that were connected to the same subsnake. So it's 4 cables going through here. Well, all of the cables probably have the same buzz on them. So what we ended up doing, I suggested, what if we inverted the polarity of one of those mics? And now when those 2 mics mix, the buzz is gone because it was flipped out of polarity, and the microphones come through. It was cool, and it felt, those moments, Bill, are the ones where I feel most like an engineer and when I feel most satisfied, because I took things, I understood how the engine worked, and I engineered a solution.
Applied that.
Right?
Exactly. Well,
yeah.
It's like the first time you use 2 microphones to record a vocalist that has leakage, that they don't want to wear headphones, so you have monitor speakers, whatever your term is. I don't know, there are a lot of strange names for them, but you're playing from a speaker in front of the singer who's singing, but you do that, you record it with 2 microphones, and then you can cancel I can't remember the whole thing, I can't lay it out now, but you do it acoustically. You essentially cancel out the leakage.
Nice.
And it works great, but it's a big, it's a pain to.
Yeah,
it's easier to hit voice isolate on a plug-in. Which
true. Yeah.
And that's not. None of this stuff is necessarily bad. I want to emphasize that all these effects.
Now that the effect does it for you, how can you push it forward? How can you innovate to, now that you've saved that time setting all that up, because there's an easy button.
Can mess with it. Yeah.
What can you spend time on pushing the standard higher?
You've heard me tell the story of the night we got one, maybe one of the first 10 Eventide harmonizers, H910, and it was delivered to Technisonic, and I'll never forget, it was pouring down rain. My creative partner at the time, the music guy, Tom Susanek, was in, and Colonel Sanders was in the building shooting a commercial. He was in the building. That has nothing to do with it, but I remember it.
Okay.
And he and I literally spent all night, taking 10 minutes each. He would go in and talk in the microphone, and I'd mess with it, and I'd go in and talk, and he'd mess with it, and doing all kinds of stuff that's very simple now that you wouldn't think, well, you took all night exploring this? Well, I said, you have to understand, we never heard this before. Never was there a device that could change the sound and manipulate it in a way that was not just frequency response or total time. It could do time and frequency irrespective of the recording, and it was just quite a thing. And all of these things, just by understanding how problems get solved in the real world over time, you will get insights into how to solve the next problem that you have. So it's just occurring to me, I love talking to Kyle like this, and this is what he sits through when we comes to a meeting. We sit and talk like this, and not just me. We have other
the whole
people.
group. Yeah,
we have a whole crew of very competent, smart people, and I love hearing them talk too. I know it's hard to believe, but I do love listening. Rob is the perfect example. Rob Schletty, our treasurer, who's the mastering guy, and he's wonderful. And to see this stuff, to see people who are passionate about it and motivated to get it right, you realize, well, it's not about my mix sounding better than his or hers. It's about making sure the message that I'm sending, whether it's my own message or my client's message, is coming through the way you want. I mean,
yes. I think that's a perfect way to end it, Bill.
Thank you.
I mean, honestly, because that we brought it full circle. So where we started today was talking about the AES convention. Right here is a QR code. There's also a link below the video. We talked about the AES. And so the next step for you watching would be, if you think AES would be a good thing for you, you can follow the link below that would take you to register as a member. There's a student membership available. If you want to become an associate member, there's no minimum education required.
No.
It may seem intimidating, but its whole purpose is to get more people and to outreach and to find and unite people who are passionate about this.
It really
thing.
is, and
Right.
that's essentially what you get. You don't get lots. We do have, if you peruse that website, and they're not all up there now in the new website, but there are benefits too, sure. You get a few
Resources,
benefits.
the white papers, there's educational
my goodness,
videos, there are
there-
events. Yeah.
The videos are not like Kyle's in the sense that they're organized to be educational. What you'll usually find on there is recordings of the presentations at conventions and conferences, but I mean you'll find. I went to one convention one time, and our lecturer was Ben Burt. Oh my God, he's a legend, you know. So these people, you meet these people and hear that, and you can watch what they said. A lot of them have passed away, but we also have an oral history on the site. There used to be a wonderful glossary of audio-related terms. I don't know if it's where you can find it now. I wish I had links to all this, but because the whole website is changing. I will tell you that as a board member, we work very hard trying to keep the organization moving. It's been very difficult, but and
there are those resources, but at the very least, I think, and it really, honestly, the most of all is the personal connections you can make, whether it's in your local area or if you're able to go to Long Beach in a couple of weeks. I'll be there, Bill will be there, and I mean, Bob Clearmount will be there, Eric Valentine will be there. All these really, really awesome people. And I mean, here's the QR code. Check it out. There's a link below. Bill, thank you so much for
Kyle,
being here.
thank you so much. I'm pleased and continued success. And everybody, you listen to what he tells you. He knows what he's talking about. And
you heard it from him.
Yeah, there you go. But I love, if we can help you in any way, please reach out to somebody at AES, and they'll figure out how to talk to you and how to help you. It's something we want to do. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you, listeners, for joining, and we'll see you next time.